whatever, and speaks therapy. But he's not true. And I really wanted to be an actress. And he said, well, why don't you do what I do? And I said, well, what do you do? He said, I go to the comedy store every week and tell blind jokes. I said, well, Alex, that may work for you. But I don't think I could get away with that. My sight is perfectly fine. He said, you dork. You go on stage and you tell cerebral palsy jokes. And so Alex it takes the credit and the blame for me. So that's what got me into it, and it worked. Alex was an angel in my path that guided me to a door, and I was doing stand-up comedy, and Norman Lear was in my audience one night in 1980, and I was doing stand-up comedy. He introduced himself to me after the show. And one of the things he said to me when he first met me, he said, you know, I've never seen anything quite like you. He said, you're very funny, but you're way before your time, kid. And I thought he was talking about a couple months, so what? I had no idea he meant a couple of decades. So there was my journey. I was the first. And I'm very proud of that. And I never ever not give credit for the people who opened those doors for me, because it was a gift. And I hope that by walking through that door, I've been able to give that gift to others so that their doors can open also.
Wow. So, we're going to
I have a question for Geri.
Sure, please.
I feel like I saw you do stand-up on television before I saw you in fact.
Yes, you did.
See, I knew you as a stand-up already before you were doing that show. All right, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't crazy.
Was I funny?
No, you're way ahead of your time.
Do you think people have caught up?
Pardon?
Do you think people have caught up? The audience is caught up.
Yeah, you know, what's really interesting is that when I was on Fact of Life, my name was Geri, Cousin Geri. And then when I got Deadwood, and I didn't even audition for Deadwood, all I had to do was stand in line in a pharmacy. And this man turned around and he said, "Are you Geri Jewell?" And I didn't really want to admit I was, because I really looked like shit that morning. And I said, "Well, yeah." And he said, "Well, I'm a huge fan of yours. I love you. You've inspired me. You've made me laugh." And I said, "Well, thank you." He said, "But I haven't seen you on TV in years." I said, "True? That's because I'm always in pharmacies." And he said, "You want a television show?" I said, "Excuse me? Well, don't you want to be back on TV? You want a series?" I said, "Look, just because I'm in a pharmacy, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm on drugs, all right?" He said, "No, in case you don't recognize me, my name is David Milch." I said, "The producer of NYPD Blue?" He said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, Mr. Milch, I'm flattered that you like my work, but let's get real. I make a real shitty cop." He said, "No, I'm doing a Western for Deadwood. You want to do a Western?" And that's how I got Deadwood. So you never know. And I recently was on Alcatraz, the new series on Fox. And my name is Geri again, by the way. It was Geri, then it was Jewell on Deadwood, and now it's Geri on Alcatraz. You know, I tell you, people think that I'm talented enough to know how to memorize lines, deliver them, but they don't think I can remember any name differently than my own. But that's okay.
So, if we were to think about doors that open, right, and where things have gone, Danny Woodburn there, who asked the question, I'll jump to you next. You're probably best known for playing Mickey Abbott on Seinfeld. Yay! And yay, yeah. And you've been on Passions, and you know the Screen Actors Guild Performance with Disabilities Committee. You've been Death to Smoochie, and we were talking a little bit beforehand. You were saying that you're in a film that's coming out at the end of March called Mirror Mirror with Julia Roberts, and a film called Badass with Danny Trejo. Which I can't wait to see. In your experience, because you came to TV and to do those roles a little bit after Geri, did you find doors were opening up? What has your experience been?
I think when you do a show, Seinfeld was my very first sitcom. I had done like an episode of Murder, She Wrote, I'd done like an episode of Hunter, but I had not done a sitcom yet. I went through the audition process, and I think it was 1993, my first episode. And I went through the audition process, I battled it out with a lot of other guys, and on the last day of auditioning, I found out that I booked it and was going to start work right away. And
Let me ask something. Were they casting specifically a little person? Or
yeah, but the storyline was very much around size at that time. But not all the episodes have been like that I've done. But that particular episode was called The Stand-In, and it was about standing in for kids soap operas, which a lot of little people did in the early days of show business. Because kids can only be on set for like 6 hours. To a certain age, they can only be on set for a little while. So they'll use little people to do off-camera work after they send the kids home. Anyway, so I booked the sitcom, and back then, you know, there wasn't a lot of cable shows. There wasn't a lot of things beyond network television that people were really watching. You know, it was the early 90s, and cable had not really, I mean, it's sure it had launched, but it had not become the being that it is now. And so back then, you were getting 20 million viewers, and that you were getting the kind of ratings that American Idol got when they first came up, you know. And the impact that has when you appear in that little tiny box, that's what opened the door for me, you know. Back then, to be on a show that much viewership was what opened. I mean, the very next day that it aired, I was parked in a red zone, and the cop refused to give me a ticket. And he was like, "Yeah, stay there as long as you want." And I'm like, "Okay, this is something." You know, and I'm driving around in my little blue Tercel, my little 1990 blue Tercel, and people will recognize me behind the wheel of a car, which I thought, I mean, I can understand you can see me 3 blocks away if I'm walking. But if I'm in a car, you know, it's a lot harder to tell that it's me, I think. Because I'm not so far down behind the wheel, you know. I do, I have to raise it up, otherwise people will die. Yes, I have a conscience around that. So that was really, for me, that was a big door opener. And, you know, growing up, I had seen, as I said in the film, other little people represented on film, but there was never really anybody other than, say, Michael Dunn or Billy Barty that I recognized as actors that were portraying roles, portraying characters with dimension and emotion and feeling. And I admired them for that, but I literally related myself more to Sidney Poitier than I did to Billy Barty. Because I saw myself as this guy who experienced a lot of the same kinds of prejudices that African Americans experienced in the 70s, you know, for me. So I like Guess Who's Coming to Dinner it is one of my favorite movies, and when I first got together with my wife, that was our ongoing joke. It's like when I go to meet the in-laws, it's Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. That's
So I'm curious then, do you think maybe that's because you hadn't seen your own experience reflected in the characters?
No, I think it's because I had never seen myself in a mirror and I did not know I wasn't black.
Is it a shot? And how has that helped your career?
Well, I mean, you know, I found that experience, the black experience, very inspiring to me, and I really latched on to that. I try to get into those clubs, but they don't let me. But, no, I really connected to that emotion and that experience, and I've watched all these amazing movies from the 50s and 60s, and you know, Blackboard Jungle, and as I said, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and you know, Defiant Ones, you know, all these sort of race relation movies, and I always felt like that's me, you know, in a lot of ways. So for me, that was the thing that really inspired me as an actor, you know. And then now you watch movies like Gentleman's Agreement, you know, a lot of these movies that address race relations were very inspiring to me, because there wasn't a lot of movies about disability growing up. There weren't a lot of things. I mean, other than seeing somebody like Geri Jewell in the 70s, you know, that wasn't as prevalent as movies that dealt with race.
Right. So it was more common. So what's the movie you'd like to see? Other than Cinemability, of course.
What's that?
What's the movie you'd like to see in addition to Cinemability?
Oh, you know, at this point, I think there's an awareness out there that we exist. But I just want to see the opportunities change. I want to see that shift from, you know, when I go to an audition and I go to an audition on a studio lot, if it's, say, Paramount or Warner Brothers, one of the older lots, a lot of the buildings are not accessible. And they're historical buildings, so they don't make any changes, they don't have to. But that inaccessibility right off the bat eliminates anybody with a mobility impairment from getting to the second floor to audition. So when that awareness becomes greater, that consideration will come into effect. And that's one of the things that Anita and I hope to achieve with our task force at the Screen Actors Guild. Is going to work directly with the powers that hire at the AMPTP, the American Motion Picture and Television Association. I think that's where producers, whatever.
SAG and AFTRA.
SAG and AFTRA, yes. One of the things we're going to talk about is that accessibility. That needs to be job one.
Access.
And then also job one needs to be to job two, and one and two interchangeable. It needs to be access, is what we said, right?
Access, inclusion. Access, inclusion, and accuracy.
Give that to us one more time.
Access, meaning to audition to the set.
To be able to get there and to be able to get the
Get in the building, get in the room, right?
Inclusion being thought of, as they said, we never even thought of it, inclusion in the thought process.
You can be the person in the restaurant, the romantic lead, the bad guy.
Any non-specific. And accuracy, which is one thing that we bring to it that really nobody else brings to it.
As they were saying about Breaking Bad.
Exactly what they were saying about
You know, there's creative ways to think about it too. If you look at somebody in a scene who is sitting behind a desk and they never get up in the whole scene. Why isn't that person, perhaps somebody who's a double amputee or somebody with some sort of mobility disability, why isn't that person considered? And they're virtually never considered, because it's just never thought of.
So, right, why can't the little person be the stockbroker? They're out there.
And
Right. Yeah, go ahead, jump in.
I think that's what was so great in the clip about what William H. Macy said, is that he never even thought of it. Even though he himself had the experience of working with United Cerebral Palsy, even in that experience, he never even thought of using, creating characters with disabilities in the script that he's writing. So, and I think that's why when push comes to shove and the projects get generated, when they come to casting, that we're not even considered, and because we weren't considered from A, so we're certainly not going to be considered the rest of the way down the line when the process just snowballs. When a project gets greenlighted, everything is so fast from there. So we need to be thought of all the way down the line in every sector, from the writer to the executive producer to the network executive to the casting directors.
Yeah, I wanted to plug into what Christine is talking about. The Law and Order has been very good about that. The Law and Order series, all of them. I played a clerk, the law clerk. Court clerk. That was the word. Court clerk. And the funny thing was that they. And I've always been thinking that judges, judges, most of the time on Law and Order, you don't, unless they're the stars and celebrities that come on as a judge, you don't see them walk away or go into their office. You will see those people. But the other judges, like Charlotte, my friend Charlotte Cullivan, played a judge for years, never came out from outside the desk. So all those years, I was like, that's a perfect job for me. So they call me finally, and it's for the court clerk. And I went in without my leg thinking, this is my 20th audition in 20 years for Law and Order. It's like, they're never going to cast me. They're just calling me in so that they can say they did, right? So I go in, and I had a lousy day. It was 90 degrees out. If I was going to wear my artificial leg, it was going to sweat right off of me, right there in the room. So I just went without it because I wasn't going to get the part anyways. And I just walked in, and I thought, you know what? It's 90 degrees out. I just decided not to wear my leg because it was going to fall off. They go, does that really happen? I was like, yeah, but beside the point, And
It's a whole different show.
And it was just, they didn't care. The truth was, I could have come in there naked. They just were there. They just were like, we want you to do this part. I did and I got the thing, but it was the court clerk. Nothing to do with having two legs, nothing to do with anything, and not a disabled role. And that's, and in theater, I play those roles all the time. Aunt Eller in Oklahoma, Gorgeous in Sisters Rosenzweig, Grisabella in Cats, which I did play as a three-legged cat.
Who did you give your bio to? I didn't pass my notes.
Excuse me. I'm just saying that most of the time I get cast as roles that aren't thought to be. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this thing that way. That was wrong. But basically, it's roles that don't have disabilities. So, but then in film and television, I find that doesn't happen as often.
I would say the same thing because I have the same experience. I rarely play a character with a disability on stage, with the obvious notable exception of Laura, which we've all three of us have played at one time or another.
Theater folks who know it.
Laura of the Glass Menagerie, Tennessee Williams of the Glass Menagerie, the girl with the limp. So, I know Anita has played.
Yeah, to be fair, Danny did her too.
Danny, there you
I know Mitch and I were talking before, and he aspires to that. As someone who started out as a fashion model for Ralph Lauren, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about, you've done soap operas. You started with Another World, you did General Hospital and Port Charles, and you've also done Law and Order and things like Desperate Housewives. But when we had a conversation before, you said something that I think is really salient here, which is that through time you were getting frustrated about the roles that you were getting and you weren't feeling satisfied. So you started creating your own work.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that process.
Well, I'll just say in a nutshell, my career started almost overnight with this Ralph Lauren ad I did. And modeling was never something I aspired to, but people thought I should try it. And then after my car accident when I was 17, I kept myself in shape. And I thought, okay, that's an option. And this wonderful opportunity came up. So make a long story short, I met Bruce Weber. He photographed me for Ralph in one of Ralph's suits. They put it in a bunch of magazines. Bang, zoom, I'm auditioning for a soap opera in New York City, which I did, and then I did about 30 episodes, but so much had happened so quickly, kind of in an unrealistic way, even though I had planned on it since I was a child to be an actor. And so I left the business and cut my hair off and went to the Navajo Nation to do some research on Native Americans with disabilities. And I went to LA after that and started over. I said, I didn't model for Ralph Lauren. People were like, you're like Calvin Klein model, right? And I went, yeah. And I was a background extra on commercials because they paid so well. And then I had a couple of jobs came up, but then this contract came up on another soap. on Port Charles, which was a spin-off of General Hospital, and they wanted to have one of the young interns be disabled. So I was fortunate and blessed enough to get that part, and they turned everybody into vampires about 6 months after I got the
Again, ahead of its time.
But to make a long story short, as I was starting over my career in my mind, and I didn't feel that anyone was writing the right part for me, I kind of realized that I had to create my own work and create my own voice. And the easiest way to do that was to have a one-man show about what had happened to me. And in my car accident, rehabilitated here in New York City at Rusk Institute. And then I played about 20 characters that came up to me on the streets of New York and said something spontaneously to me. And a lot of them were homeless folks or prostitutes, alcoholic people.
So prolific.
Yeah, the people who felt, you know, forgotten, whatever. And they bonded with me. And I'm not afraid of anybody, so I caught a good rap with a few of them. We didn't go camping. But, you know...
But New Yorkers don't do that anyway.
So, writing my one-man show and putting it on stage and paying for it myself and producing this project was really an epiphany for me, because within 24 hours of my last show, I got offered that contract on Port Charles. But nobody from Port Charles saw my show. It was you telling the universe that you are ready to work. And you have to do it yourself sometimes. And at least in the beginning, or at least when you haven't gotten anything going in your life, you need to be bold and go out. I'm going through it right now because I moved back to New York 2 years ago and I can't audition for anything. And so I have a couple projects I need to do. And you'll all be invited, you know, because I've worked now. I have a nice resume to fall back on and to come here and talk about with you. But it's a crazy business, and it's not a business to feel like you're a victim. Because once we start feeling victimized in our lives, you know, we lose our enthusiasm. And so I urge you to not fall into that pattern of feeling rejected. Unless you reject your own self. And so but this is a theme and a message that keeps coming up in our lives, whoever we are and whatever we go through, really, I think. And I just have to say, I'm just so happy to be here tonight, because I did the IMPWD campaign, and I was in LA just a few weeks ago. And I don't like LA anymore. But, you know, I had a great time, good people there, some of them, but I felt such an energy. I felt the energy in New
Be careful,
York.
Danny's sitting right next to you.
I know, I'm going to get one of these right here. I felt this energy in New York when we were Skyping, and Christine was getting emotional at the, you know, when she began the session. And I'm like, what am I doing in LA when I need to be there with these people? And and now I'm back, but I have to do it myself again. Now, one quick example that I always think about was I heard Billy Bob Thornton say a story that he was catering for big Hollywood parties, and he got a producer in the corner of the room, and he goes, hey, you know, how do you break it in this business? You know, I'm an actor, I'm good, I'm funny. And the producer looked at him and he goes, well, you're not good looking. And he goes, write your own project. And he came up with Sling Blade. And the character he wrote about and played in Sling Blade was a character that was a real-life person in his hometown that he had mimicked in his stand-up for years. So he wrote what he knew, and look what happened. You know, I mean, whether it's good or bad, you know, he's had a great career, and he's not struggling now. So it's for me, it's something about, you know, because there's a constant struggle, especially when some days you don't feel so good, or whatever. But it's a wonderful thing to pull yourself up and produce something and put it in front of people and then see what happens.
And you don't have the same worries about them getting it wrong.
No, you're not going to get it wrong. I mean, you might forget a line. That doesn't matter. You know, it's you've told the universe once again that you're prepared for something bigger and better, and you'll get it in one way or another. I believe.
I think that's a perfect lead-in. Thank you. I think that's a perfect lead-in to Jenny. Jenny, you've worked in the industry for a long time. You've done a number of different films. I remember one I saw back when I was doing the This series, which was a true disabled hero. I'm talking pistol packing mama taking on semi-trucks and zipping down a zip line called Ready, Willing, and Able. And I'm curious to know, in your evolution, somebody who's been in the industry and has worked in the industry, what led you to finally say, I've got to make Cinemability. I've got to make this film? That was a great question. Now the technology's messing up on it. Can you hear it?
And while we're waiting, I'll just let you know that I once Skyped with a blind Korean filmmaker. And when his picture came up, I said the natural thing. I said, Mr. Lim, can you see me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, we got you now.
Hi, Jenny.
Thanks. Hi, Jenny.
Wait, I don't think she hears you.
No, she hears you, she hears you.
Ask again?
Did you get the question?
Yeah, she hears me here.
Which mic is working?
And you just need to speak louder. And Serena, can we raise
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. I was saying that you've worked in the industry. Can you hear me now? Just want to make sure.
Well, there's no audio coming in.
No audio. Good.
Maybe repeat it. Can you repeat the question?
Nancy, are you on? Can you type the question? Can somebody send it that way? Or can repeat? Can someone?
Yeah, Itzy's next to.
She can hear Itzy if you say.
Okay. So the question is, as someone who's worked in the industry for a long time and done out-of-the-box films like Ready, Willing, and Able, what was the thing where you, Jenny, finally had to say, I must make Cinemability? And what was the catalyst, and what do you want to see come from it?
After working in the industry for so long, what was the catalyst that led you to make Cinemability and say, I have to make a difference?
So first of all, let me say I'm sorry I couldn't be with you all there in person, but we are real busy in the editing room right now trying to put the rest of Cinemability together. So I'm glad we could do it. Ravit was able to set this up via Skype, but sorry I couldn't be there together. Looks like y'all had a great time and good dinner. Hey guys, good to see you. I'm glad your flight's all made there. That's fantastic. As far as being in business all that long, I'm not that old. I still feel like I'm kind of about experience in the business, kind of on the newer side. But what made me decide to do it, you know? It's not that I started out wanting to change people's perception or anything. It's just that I'm curious by nature. And actually, I don't really consider myself a documentary filmmaker, documentarian, but it's sort of lucky that I'm curious and started doing this, and it snowballed, where I got deeper and deeper and realized how important it was and how rich the material was. And that I knew a lot of people that I could reach out to get involved in, that it would be an important film to do.
And so where are you in the process of?
As you can see, we're actually editing right now, which is why I couldn't fly to New York, because literally I'm in the editing bay every day. We are under a tight timeline to qualify for some of the Academy Award run for 2012. And so we are currently editing. There are a couple of interviews we might still grab. We still have time to do, but primarily we're in the post-production stage.
Fantastic. And how can people find out more and follow the progress of the film?
Well, we recently put up a Facebook page, and there's a Twitter, Cinemability link as well. And we just went live with a website last night, Cinemability.com. So it has links to the Facebook and the Twitter right there on the Cinemability.com. So there you can get a lot of information and follow kind of our progress as we go along. I mean, we are still actually, as you know, in independent filmmaking, and it's always a struggle. Even if you have tons of great people in it, it's always a struggle. So we're still in the process of even fundraising and getting some finishing funds. We also have a link on IMDb if anyone wants to see the complete cast. So it's been sort of a big task of getting a combination of the word out there of what we're doing, which is starting actually tonight with this event, and so we've been a little bit under the radar up until now, and launching the Facebook, the Twitter, the Cinemability.com, so that people can go and get a little bit of information as we get ready for the big launch once the film is completed, and you can see instead of 9 minutes, 90 minutes.
Fantastic, thank you. We're all looking forward to seeing it. Can't wait. Thank you.
So, more thing, if you go on to either YouTube or Cinemability.com, you can see some really funny promos that we just did with Randall Danny Woodburn and Geri Jewell, and thanks guys for doing those. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah, they're fantastic. I hope we get to see more of those. Your Jerry Lewis there was amazing. That's all I'll say. You've got to check it out for yourself. Go to the website. Thank you so much. Rick, I want to get you in here. You've done a lot of work in Australia. That accent is in Brooklyn. And the founding director of the Other Film Festival, which is the only international film festival dedicated to exploring contemporary experience of disability in Australia. And you're doing that since 2004. And I'm curious because, I think that now with Real Abilities really taking off in the States and going to different cities and expanding beyond New York City in the way that it has, what's your experience been? What was your idea when you started the Other Film Festival, and what has occurred? What's the trajectory of that been, and what were you surprised by in that process?
Well, first I want to just acknowledge the wealth of kind of talent and information sitting here at the table. I'm just kind of overwhelmed by fantastic stories, and I feel very privileged to getting a really strong insight into what the scene is here, and I hear some things that are echoed of what our experience in Australia is and some things that are very different. The Other Film Festival started with a simple premise, which is there isn't a film festival where films made by, with or about people with a disability. There is no festival. There is a festival for damn near everything else in Melbourne, but there is no disability film festival, which leads to the natural thing, well, let's make one. So we did. It started with a very simple premise, and some of it I'm actually embarrassed to talk about because it was ignorant at the start. It was ignorant of what the experiences and aspirations of many members of the disability community is. It started simply with the premise to go, we don't see the representation of people with a disability on our screens, in our cinemas or on TV, so we need to see it up on screen. But we didn't think about the accessibility of the cinema very much. We didn't think about captioning, we didn't think about audio description, and very fortunately the organisation that I worked for started to insist on that. It's an art called Arts Access Victoria. I was resistant against that at the start because I thought, well, how do we know people are going to come and use those services? And I don't want to spend money on services I'm not sure will be used. But they said, no, you have to provide the services and people will come and you build that. So we started with an audience of 500 people in 2004. And at the last festival we had 2,300 attend over a 5-day festival. The festival has evolved in a few other ways. Please don't clap, I think that's appallingly small. Honestly.
But it wasn't enough, is it?
Yeah. I didn't mean the applause. I meant the audience. It was appallingly small. See
How small was the audience?
Yeah. That's small. Thank you for handing it to me on the plate. Yeah. I'm embarrassed. So the festival is involved in several significant ways. So it's evolved. At first it started with the idea films by, with and about people with a disability. Kind of catches everything. Now we articulate it as films which represent the lived experience of disability. So we're really interested in that authenticity that's been talked about here. We want to see characters that are real. We want to see, we have a lot of documentaries. We want to see representation of real experiences, because film, like no other medium, it opens the door that you can go into someone else's experience. It's a beautiful thing in the cinema. When it works, it's fabulous. We also think about what is the experience that people with disabilities have when they go to the cinema, when they go to film festivals. Do they have the same opportunity to go into the life of the film that everyone else has? If you feel that you're different, or you're treated in a different way, or that you're made too much of a fuss of when you arrive, or that the captioning isn't good quality, or the audio description isn't, that prevents you going into the life of the film. So we think about what is the destination. So we realised that we talked a lot about access, but we hadn't talked about what is access, what is the access to? We got it the wrong way around. We prioritised access rather than what is the experience you want that the access should give you access to. So it really freed us up to think about access in really wild ways. Someone rings up and they go, I love your festival, but I can't sit or stand for any length of time. Do you have a bed in the cinema?
I was just going to mention that because I was looking at Rick's PDF from the 2010 festival, and I met Rick in 2009 when I was in Australia for an Arts and Disability Festival speaking and performing. And I looked at the PDF yesterday, and it said we have a bed available for those who cannot stand or sit. Which I thought, wow, that's sorry. Did everyone hear that? Yeah. That was commenting on the bed that Rick was just mentioning. I didn't mean to jump on you. I just saw that and thought, that's amazing.
I just like to watch movies in bed.
I'd love to run a festival where everyone's lying in bed, because it's like being at home and watching a film as a communal experience. It's a great idea. So we've got to have an all-night session. We've got to plan to have an all-night special session with beanbags on the floor and beds.
You know, in the sit-and-sleep movie theaters.
And if the movie's boring, you go to sleep. That is your right. So, and also, we're like this festival, and I see many parallels already with Real Abilities. We're a festival that's dedicated to social change, and we wear it on our sleeve now, and that's what we want to do. So I know that later on, I hope that it will take a more strategic direction, because it was mentioned that there's been lots of talk about access, but you know, the decision makers are probably not in the room. So, you know, we're all going to be in furious agreement with each other today, but the people who are making the very serious decisions, who basically have the money and the advertisers and the producers, they're the people that we need to be talking to. So, Australia. Compared to the United States, we're in a much worse position. We're a bit like Mexico. You know, they have a proverb in Mexico, poor Mexico, so far from God, so close to the United States. So, think of Australia in the same way. About 95% of the films that screen in our cinemas are produced in this country. So we have no control over that, but they dominate our screens like no other. I'm talking about 95%. So 5% of the product that Australians see is made in Australia. We have had a bravely shrinking film industry for probably about 30 years, and the figures bear it out. Every year it gets smaller. So what we've got is we've got a pie that's getting smaller. This is the biggest challenge for social justice, to say, here we've got a pie that's getting shrinking and it will continue to shrink with the global financial crisis. How do we get the fingers of people with a disability into that pie? It's a big challenge because everyone in the industry is running scared. There are 1 million people out there who dream of being actors. Some of them have disabilities. You know, we're all in it together. But
yeah, they can't act.
And they can't.
That's the biggest disability.
That is a big disability. So the biggest grossing film in Australia last year was a film about a dog. It's called Red Dog, and I'm sure it'll come to the US at some stage and it'll have a small run here. So I'd like to say you've got more chance of getting into a feature film as the main character if you're a dog than if you use a wheelchair. So that's the state of play in Australia. So we're really behind the 8 ball because we're not even making the product that we're getting to see. So it's for actors with a disability, and there are very few. And there are probably, you know, like here, I'm really heartened to go, here are people who are getting gigs, you know, like there's maybe a long time between drinks, you know, in different times, you know, and you've got a whole lot of other things going on. But in Australia, I don't know any. I don't know any actors with a disability except for Back-to-Back Theatre Company in the theatre world, but film actors. And if you don't work, you atrophy. Your craft does not develop. You know, you go backwards as an actor. You've got to be working to do the work. And a lot of people make their own films and make documentaries, but it's not vibrant and it's really difficult. So the film festival this year is going to run a whole lot of workshops for further professional development, and we also are really keen to screen the film that we've just seen, Cinemabilities. I think is a great vehicle, and our job as the festival is to try and get the decision makers to the table to talk about and talk about what are the obstacles on your side. How can we help you address the obstacles on your side? I've spoken more than enough. Thank you very much.
If you would, let's talk a little bit about the obstacles and also about the solutions. You work with the Alliance for Inclusion in the Arts. You've been, you know, in really the vanguard of trying to connect actors with disabilities with the industry, and in fact, making sure that people in the industry have disabilities as well. So it's not just actors, but it's producers, it's directors, it's casting directors, it's showrunners, it's all of the above. Tell us a little bit about what you're finding through your work at the Alliance and also through the work that you did with, you know, IMPWD and that you've done with some of the unions as well. What do you see as the bigger picture here, and where do we need to be putting our attention so that these things can occur that Rick has been talking about?
Well, I first want to say, just to piggyback on something that Rick just said, that I was very struck when I was in Australia that there's a serious lack of training for artists with disabilities in Australia. Was my perception. I don't know, you can confirm that or not, but there is no training for a person with a disability who aspires to be an actor. At least here, you can find training programs. You can pursue an independent acting class. So I was really struck by the lack of even less access to opportunities than we have here. Yeah, I think exactly what Rick just said about where they want to go in Australia is targeting decision makers, is right where we are right now in the U.S. in terms of where we need to be, in terms of targeting the industry and decision makers, particularly those people who are potential employers to performers with disabilities, is where we need to put our attention now. And which is what the work that Danny and Anita and hopefully I will be doing on the PWB task force, is really getting in the room with those decision makers and saying, what are those obstacles that the perceived obstacles that you have towards working with performers with disabilities? Because up until now, we haven't been able to break through that wall of convincing them. This is just an example. There's something called the casting data report, which SAG and AFTRA use to calculate the number of people with disabilities that are on sets, on TV sets, on film sets. There are 4, according to the U.S. government, there are 4 protected groups. That's seniors, people of color, women, and people with disabilities. On the casting data reports, 3 of those groups appear. People with disabilities do not appear. And we've been trying for 15 plus years to get on those casting data reports. And now is the time where we are going to demand that, yes? That's one of the our big demands in the PWD task force, is to demand that there's an accurate record of people with disabilities. And then you'll start to see that we're not. 0.5% of all lines that are spoken on TV are spoken by performers with disabilities.
Give that again. Give it.
0.5% of all lines spoken on television, according to a 2005 study, are spoken by people with disabilities.
Geri, you did so well in math. Why don't you tell us what that is?
Anita, I saw you over
Close to
there.
nothing, I can tell you.
You're biting your bottom lip over there. I can see
Biting the
you ready to
No,
go.
I just wanted to say that as of yesterday, I think it was, or the day before, I got an email from the Office of Employment Accountability or Contract Accountability in Washington, where employers for government positions, government jobs, are now being required. They just got this passed, and if I say it wrong,
I can correct you, I know the stat.
Oh, there you go.
That's 7%.
It's a goal.
The
The
goal
goal
is
is
It's a goal of
7% of your hiring pool in your office.
If you're a government
in the
contractor.
government contractor. Has to be, should be,
Should
the
be.
goal is to have 7% workers with disabilities. But what I found fascinating about this email was not the numbers or anything, but that they used a phrase that said, those who are measured are those who work, something like that, or the ones who are measured. But it's what we've been saying all along, is if we're counted, then we have a statistic by which to say, look at this statistic, it's deplorable, and something can happen. When we're counted, we count. Do you know what I'm saying? And that, I was happy to see that that came about, and you know more, you're better at like quoting this, but thank you for like jumping in there. But that she used that language, and she also used the language level the playing field. Because my point has always been, once we have leveled the playing field and the actors with disabilities
Once you level it,
are auditioned,
Once you
and
level the
given-
playing field, it's accessible, correct?
Well-
No, but go ahead.
well, that's right. It's level literally, yes. But once you level, okay, so physically and mentally and otherwise, symbolically level the playing field, meaning that we can all audition for a number of roles, whether we have disabilities or not. Then I'm okay with who plays what roles. What I'm not okay with is that we have a closed door in front of us for all kinds of roles and roles with disabilities. If we can't even be seen for roles with disabilities, we have no hope of being seen for any of the roles. So my feeling is that when they used the phrase leveling the playing field, I felt like we are all beginning to use that same universal language, which I see in a positive way as a move towards positive change. And I also just want to say to Mitch that I think there's a number of us at the panel who have written our own shows and have moved in the right direction because we did.
Yeah.
I wrote a musical, and
I was going to say, a lot of you might be asking why don't we get counted? And one of the reasons, believe it or not, is the American with Disabilities Act.
Yes.
When we negotiate with the producers and all the powers that be, we don't actually sit down with the producers. We sit down with their lawyers. And their lawyers are all about wording and semantics and how can we not be sued. And what the ADA has allowed Americans to do, Americans with disabilities to do, is say, I need access to employment, I need access to everything. And when that access is denied, people with disabilities have the legal right to sue. And so their fear is the use of this Cassie Data report could be used for litigation. So that's why they don't count us. So what we're trying to do is, obviously we count ourselves, so we try to get around that and present that. And then the more opportunity we get to be in the room with them, the lawyers, and the producers, the more opportunities I think we'll be able to make.
And counting ourselves.
Yeah.
And count ourselves by the Gay Lesbian Alliance Against Anti-Defamation. Them doing that count.
We counted for them, we counted for GLAAD.
Well, they just
For
took
the
that.
GLAAD study, that was us. We gave them the numbers and then they put it out there with their numbers. The GLAAD study is of where we are on TV, gay and lesbian, LGBT presence on TV. And they've included people of color and women and seniors in the past, but as of last year, 2010, through the watchdog group, they came to us through the campaign and said, we want to include you, and that's where we got numbers. And that's the first place that we've been counted. And the Hollywood Reporter and Backstage and the LA Times all picked up on that. Suddenly, ta-da, our numbers are out there, and that's what really...
And interestingly enough, senior citizens are not suing Hollywood.
Yeah.
Isn't
that interesting? Because they were identified as senior
Because they were identified as senior citizens. I think Beth Bienvenue from the National Endowment of the Arts had something she wanted to say about here.
I just wanted to greet everyone and say hello. The National Endowment for the Arts is very committed to employing people with disabilities in the arts. We've held a couple of summits in the last couple decades on employing people with disabilities, careers in the arts for people with disabilities. And this is the nonprofit sector as well as the for-profit sector where Broadway and Hollywood exist. I actually came from the Labor Department, which collects a lot of these statistics on employing people with disabilities. And I just want to clarify what Anita was talking about is a proposed rulemaking for federal contractors to have goals in hiring. It hasn't been set yet, but we hope that it'll pass. So I just want to say that we are committed to working on this. Our requirements are that arts organizations have to be accessible for everybody with disabilities, and that includes employment. And we just, we are behind this, and just let us know if there's anything that we can do to help in this endeavor.
Thank you. I think what I'd like to do now, because I know we're running short of time, is turn it over to you.
We're going to take a couple of questions.
Take a couple questions. Looks like Simi Litton here in the front, author, filmmaker herself. Please.
Hi, thank you all. This has been enormously interesting. There's been a lot of focus on actors as well, there should be, and I wonder if we, and also filmmaking, but I wonder if we can look forward to thinking about the production of films that not only look at the lived experience of people with disabilities, but open up the whole topic of ableism. You said that the Guest Who's Coming to Dinner had a profound effect on you because it opened up racism for you and for the public. And although there have been wonderful examples of films and horrible examples of films that look at the lived experience of individual conditions, if we are going to move to social justice issues and to social transformation, it seems to me that we have to think about and conceptualize films and other artistic productions that open up ableism. Where do you see that happening? Who's talking about it? Anyone in Hollywood? Anyone who's producing? I'm curious from your folks' perspective.
There were a few films actually that came up this year that we weren't able to put in the festival. Well, one of them, was it the Black Balloon that was that there was a
That was an Australian film, I believe.
which we were not able to put in the festival because it was already being distributed on Netflix.
It was already out on Netflix.
So legally we couldn't, but I think that was a pretty good example of ableism. Wouldn't you say that the way that people responded to the character, we started to see
Actually, could you define specific what ableism is?
there are a number of different ways to talk about ableism, but obviously one of them is to, one way is to compare it to racism or to sexism, and to think about the ways that antipathy toward another group from the dominant group produces discrimination and produces alienation among groups. I also like to think about, we use the term homophobic and heterosexism as two kind of sides of a coin, where heterosexism is the sort of centering of heterosexuality as the normative, and and viewing homosexuality, a quaint term, but I'll just let it go for now, as the othering. But there's also homophobia, which is hatred and antipathy, and I think both are operative in ableism, and I think they both have to be understood better.
I'll also say that Body and Soul, one of the films that we have in the festival this year, has a fascinating study of ableism, an example of it in Mozambique. I mean, I've been speaking at a number of the screenings of that, and it's a fascinating example of it. It's a documentary. The audience response is fantastic to it, because it really does show about the real life, every day, what you face if you get out there. If you're an entrepreneur and you open a shoe shop of your own, if you're a dancer, and if you just want to get on a bus, and in Mozambique, they really will go without you if you've got a chair. And that's what, I mean, I'm not saying that it covers everything, but I think we have more than one film in this season, but I would say, because I've been representing Body and Soul, it's big.
Can I say something about, I like the term ableism. I mean, I've been disabled for almost 30 years, I've never heard the term, and I heard it here tonight. And it's because this festival's here tonight, for me to come here and keep learning. I think that there's something I want to say about being more proactive and a little bit more, a little angrier with the powers that be. When something happens as insulting as what happened with Tropic Thunder, but some people don't really realize what the problem was. It's not Ben Stiller pretending to be disabled. It's the fact that Paramount and DreamWorks was allowing the word retard to be used in their ad campaigns. Not in PG films. You go to a PG movie, you see the preview, see a preview for Tropic Thunder in a PG movie, they don't use the word retard. They only use it in R-rated movies. Now, who is deciding to make fun of us to an R-rated, to the older population, where it's funny? We're going to make money off of this word retard. And they did make money. Now, let me just finish that. What happened was there was this incredible reaction, and it was in the paper every day for over 3 weeks. But I was part of the strategy meeting before going into meeting with Stacy Snyder, and I'm a name dropper, good and bad, and she's bad. And what she said was, well, if you're going to demonstrate across the street from our premiere, have some civility. We hope you're civil, is what she said. And I still haven't heard anything from Mr. Spielberg about the incident, not one word. So I don't have a problem boycotting people and networks and studios, and I don't have a problem picketing. I wanted the actors to go on strike, but we didn't, because the writers went on strike first. See, so it's like let's get a little tougher. Let's talk about our economic power, our collective power, and not just the numbers, but let's make, I'll be the first online. I'm desperate for attention. But let's make the point that we're freaking pissed. And we got money to spend, and we won't spend it on you. And once they realize that, then all of a sudden, it's like the bottom line money thing is what we will represent to them. And we've never represented anything except somebody to kick around and make fun of. And so when they realize that we're going to boycott your ass, I'm going to kick your ass in the parking lot too when you come out of that meeting. Because we know what car you drive. Your name's on the license plate. Don't be nervous about being angry. I never got angry because if my father was so angry I didn't want to be like him. I love the guy. And now I'm like him. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like John Longley. Thank God, you know. So we're so not, I don't want to say passive in a bad way. We're at peace, disabled people, with ourselves for the most part. We love ourselves. Okay, so that is part of maybe writing our own projects, showing people that we love ourselves. And then how insane it is to make fun of this group of people. But they still make fun of us because they think they can get away with it, and they haven't been able to. But this is going to change, and I'm excited to be part of it.
So this is
it's the first I've heard the word ableism as well. And in thinking about it, I think I've always had an awareness of it, but not necessarily put to words in quite the same way. But I know that the world would not accept a Caucasian actor portraying an African-American personality. Right? I mean, we would not accept that. That would be, they would call that blackface. That's what we would say.
Weaker.
But at the same time, we are okay with an able-bodied actor portraying a person with a disability, and we overlook it completely. We're okay with it.
That's how they get awards.
We'll reward it. We'll give the Academy Award for that person. And I think it came to light for me because I'm self-centered and I'm an actor and I only think about myself. It came to light for me when The Lord of the Rings was casting. And in the breakdown, and I have it, it said that they had a height requirement for the roles of the hobbits. And the height requirement was 5'6" to 5'9" because they were going to shrink down all these actors. So, and it said literally no little people in the breakdown. And so I wrote to Peter Jackson and I said, you know, in reading this, that you have this ultimatum, I guess is the word, not quite the word I'm looking for, but this